Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Benjamin de Ridder. I work for the Forest Landscape Restoration Mechanism of FAO. For those that already have connected, welcome. Hopefully more participants will connect during the webinar. So the aim, yes, as you all know, the Restoration Initiative is one of the largest programs with covering multiple countries, working with different partners on forest landscape restoration. And as such, it's really a ideal basis to collect good practices and share widely across the globe, as the different projects under the TRI are covering different ecosystems, different landscapes. So it's an ideal situation. And FAO, under the global component of the TRI, is leading this documentation and dissemination and supporting countries to do that of good practices on restoration. As you also know, FAO is co-leading the United Nations Decade on ecosystem restoration, and as such, different task forces have been working on a variety of things. One of the task forces on the best practices has led the efforts to develop the toolkits and templates and standards to support practitioners and project implementers to collect the best practices. And this is the aim of this webinar. It's building on what we already showed last year during our global knowledge sharing workshop in Kenya of TRI, and is to support. And the aim of this workshop is to provide information on really upscaling the knowledge of and visibility of good practices on restoration. So I'll just provide you a brief overview of what we're going to talk about today. Next slide, please. So straight after this introduction, I'll give the floor to my colleague Andrea to provide you a short overview of the UN Decade framework for documenting of good practices. Then we will have a live interactive demonstration led by Cristiane on how to document the good practices through our FERM registry. And then we will close with next steps, and also we will give you some time for questions and answers. I would like to also point attention that this webinar, you have availability of live interpretation. So you have to click on the bottom in interpretation and choose your channel, French, English. So you can, during the question and answer session, you can or write your questions in the chat or raise your hand and raise your question live. So I'll give you the floor to Andrea to provide you an overview of the UN Decade framework. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Ben, and good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here, and I will be quickly providing you with an overview and giving you some context of this effort to collect and disseminate good practices. So as Benjamin already mentioned, this effort occurs in the context of the Task Force on Best Practices, which is a task force led by FAO, established in the context of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration to support the implementation of the decade on efforts and focusing on efforts on knowledge dissemination and capacity development. So currently, the task force is a collaborative effort of more than 360 members from more than 150 global leading organizations. And the work of the task force is structured around 7 outputs, with particular focus for this webinar on output 7, that is the documentation and dissemination on good practices. So for this context, it's important to highlight what is the relevance for documenting and disseminating good practices in the context of the decade and for ecosystem restoration. So first of all, there are many reasons for this, but first of all, for this context, is to foster mutual learning and knowledge sharing among restoration practitioners so that they can replicate and adapt good practices to other situations with similar goals, and they can, in that way, avoid repeating mistakes, which will contribute to enhancing their capacities to implement and sustain effective restoration efforts across all sectors, ecosystems and regions. Also, here, before going into the details of the documentation process, it's important also to clarify what is a good practice for ecosystem restoration. So the task force has defined a good practice as an evidence-based approach, technique, or technology that contributes to achieve one or more objectives of a restoration initiative, maximizing benefits for nature and people across different contexts. It is usually a component of a restoration initiative that has been applied, tested, and replicated in different contexts, and therefore can be easily transferred or adapted to other initiatives with similar goals. Important to clarify that if a practice has been tested only in a specific context, is considered a promising practice. Then results need to be proven outside the current situation for replicability and adaptability to different contexts. With this definition, also I would like to clarify that we are in this framework, we are documenting good and promising practices. Both are allowed. How to document good practices? So the task force on best practices, it is documenting good practices through the FERM registry. So I will give you more details. So that's the main focus of this webinar. But in addition, we are collaborating with other allied platforms. For the moment, we are collaborating with WCAT, Panorama Solutions, GoPro4. These are platforms that also collect and document and disseminate good practices, not only for ecosystem restoration, but for other related topics. But what we are trying to do is to facilitate the link to all the practices related to ecosystem restoration collected by these platforms, and for sure including the FERM registry, through this common search engine to facilitate access to these platforms, to these practices by the users. This is something that is ongoing and will be available soon. So just to give you an overview for the process of documenting good practices through the FERM registry, my colleague Cristiane will give you the guidance step by step, but here is just a quick first overview. So first, you need to sign up on the platform. You need to create an account. Then after you have your account, you will be able to register the initiative, the restoration initiative, and other good practices. So the first step is to register the restoration initiative. This is through the FERM platform. The FERM is the framework for ecosystem restoration monitoring. It's a platform that was created also in the context of the decade by the UN Decade Monitoring Task Force. Is also a task force led by FAO. So they created this platform for monitoring purposes, but now we are collaborating with them to also host the documentation process of good practices there. So then the first step is to register the restoration initiative and in the first form, and then you can document as many good practices as you want through a second form. You will then receive more details. Then after the practices are documented, there is a review process that will take place, and if the practice or the practices that you documented are endorsed by this review, through this review process, then they will be featured on the FERM platform. And then here we are providing a draft overview of the visualization on how these practices will be visualized once endorsed. Also, important to mention that the criteria that we are using to review the good practices. So we are creating this review panel, as I mentioned, for the process of review. And the criteria is based on the 10 principles for ecosystem restoration to guide the UN Decade. These principles were published also through a collaborative effort led by the Task Force on Best Practices, and they were published in 2021. And these principles, from these principles, we developed criteria applicable to good practices, and this is the basis to assess the good practices that will be documented. Finally, I would like to highlight the benefits for people, organizations, practitioners interested in documenting good restoration practices. So Again, there could be several reasons for this. Here we are just highlighting some. First, this will allow for learning and reflecting from their own experiences through a standardized documentation process. The people and organizations that document good practices will receive feedback from the review panel, leading to further improvement. They will also be able to be part of a global community of ecosystem restoration practitioners, which will enable exchange of experience, information, and knowledge. And also they will gain some visibility and recognition for their organizations among the global restoration community of the UN Decade, and then contributing to this global movement that the decade is creating. So here I think I pass to my colleague Cristiane to start the interactive demonstration. So thank you so much for your attention, and Chris, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Thank you for this contextualization. I need you to stop sharing your screen, then I can share mine. Okay, so my name is Cristiane. I also work for the Forest and Landscape Restoration Mechanism, supporting the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, and I'll be guiding you through this demonstration, how to use the FERM registry, and how the steps on how to register your initiative, and also document your good practices. Can you see my screen? Can I just have a raise up? Okay, great. Thank you. So let's start. So the first step is to access the FERM registry website. We'll be sharing with you later the link for that. So you're gonna click on register your restoration initiative and good practices here. So if you don't have an account yet, you will have to sign up for one. So you're gonna click here, no account, ask for one. And in this FERM registry sign up form, you have to provide your name, your email address, the institution, and for the institution, we kindly ask you to type this term here, the Restoration Initiative, FAO, IUCN, UNEP. We'll be sharing this information with you later. So if you use this information here, you'll be signed to the group created in the FERM registry for the TRI projects. So it's important that you use this term here when signing up. Then next to the institution affiliation, you can click on UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration Partner, as all these institutions are partners of the UN Decade. And then you have to answer a question, how you would like to use the FERM platform. Here's just an example. You can type to register my restoration initiative and document good practices. Then you click on send, okay? So then you send your sign up registration, and then you receive an email, probably saying that you were approved or not. Probably will be approved because you are part of the UN Decade partners. And then here I'll be using my email address because I already have an account, in order to show you the demonstration, okay? So this will happen also with you when you have your email approved. So here is written, an email was sent to you to complete the login. So I will open my email here for you to see it. And here is saying, click on the link, then you have access to the FERM registry. Then we can start our step-by-step. So this is the first page of the FERM registry platform. So here you can have information about initiatives. And the first step is to add a new initiative. As Andrea explained to you, we are collaborating with the Monitoring Task Force. So the first step in the FERM registry is to add a new initiative. And here you will find the name of the organization you signed it for. So remember, if you sign it as the Restoration Initiative, you will find it here. So click on that. And this is the first form. So we have shared with you, like by email previously, the forms, both forms in Word format. And I'm showing you now how is this form in the online platform. So the initiative registration consists of like 7 sections: initiative, area, characteristics, activities, ecosystems, indicators, and results. And it's a simple short, so you just have to fill some information. And for the purpose of this demonstration here, I will be using some information from an example on She agroforestry farm model provided by one of the task force members, conducted in Nigeria. So I'll be using this example for a demonstration purpose, but just to highlight to you, like Nigeria is not like a TRI project, a country member. So it's just for the purpose of this example, I'm using this information. So I will start here, taking the title that we have as an example. So I'll read. So for example, we are using this initiative here, enhancing resilience through shea agroforestry farm models in Nigeria. And then next question in this first section is a short description of the initiative. So, okay, I'm just using the example here. So I'll read to you, then you have like an overview of what we are talking about, like doing this exercise. So the initiative seeks to restore shea agroforestry parklands and improve the climate and economic resilience of shea producing communities. In particular, the initiative focuses on 4 pillars: the presence of shea and native trees on farms, the multi-cropping, third, apiculture, beekeeping, for example, and the 4th, production of organic fertilizer. Okay, so it's pretty an agroforestry implementation, the initiative. So here you need to provide the website of your initiative, the target area, for example, like 20 hectares, the starting date of your initiative, the ending date, or the expected date to finish. Here you can upload the initiative document, any publication, like an annual review of the initiative. Here you type the objectives of the initiative. So for the example of the agroforestry would be like reforest degraded land, improve soil health, increase food and products production, contribute to climate change, and improve livelihoods. Okay. So here you can also add the points of contacts of your initiative. So individual name of the responsible, email, organization, and you can add more than one. So if you have more than one point of contact to be shared, here you can add a keyword. You could write here agroforestry, for example, in this example, in this case. And you can also add the organizations that implemented the initiative and the project. So here you put the name of the organization, the acronym, and the type you select, and the role. So for example, if you have a leading organization or more than one leading organization and other supporting organizations, you can add all of them. You can add more than one. And here, please, you have to click on save and next, or save and exit if you want to come back later. Because if you do not click on save, then you will lose what you are feeling, what you have already completed in the form. So please remember to click on save, and then it goes directly to the next step, next section. So this section on area, you have to identify the areas that you apply your initiative. So here is asking about the total area of your initiative. We are using the example of 20 hectares. And here you have 3 options. You can select an administrative area, you can upload a polygon, or you can draw directly on the platform. So for this example here, I will use the example from Nigeria. So it's an agroforestry applied in the Okeodo site, Oyo State. So the country here would be Nigeria. Let me find Nigeria. And then the region is Oyo, and the province is Oyo East. Okay. And also I'll just show you quickly how to draw a polygon, because it's like another function that is different. So you find Nigeria here, and then you find the Oyo State, Nigeria, Oyo here, see? And then you find where is your area, and you will draw a polygon. Okay, then you also have the option to upload the shapefile. Then you save and next. This tab here on characteristics will provide characteristics regarding the areas you just selected on elevation, temperature, rainfall, and land cover. But this information will be automatically generated, so you don't have to worry about filling this section. So save and next. So the section on activities, you will have to provide the activities you used in the implementation of the initiative. You have to provide the starting date and the ending date. And here you have to provide activities, select activities for each area you have selected before. So see, you have all the areas and activities. Just for reasons of example now, I will choose some activities regarding the agroforestry initiative we're talking about. So here, agroforestry, tree planting. Also, I have here for this training of trainers, promotion of indigenous. Okay, that's okay, that's enough. I'll always save the next. Also, next tab here, they ask for the ecosystems where the initiative was implemented. So for this, which is an agroforestry initiative, it's a terrestrial ecosystem. So this last one here, it's written intensive land use biome. So it represents all the farmlands. So, and also Nigeria is under savanna biome, so we can select both. Save and next. Okay, next section is on the indicators. So these indicators, they are selected to monitor ecosystem restoration progress, as this first form on initiatives was made by the Monitoring Task Force. All this information will be our aim to monitor ecosystem restoration progress. So this section here asks you to provide information on targets and indicators on the Sustainable Development Goals. So here you can find the 17 goals. I will just, for an example, choose goal 15, which is regarding land on Earth. So we can select, for example, forest area as a proportion of total area, total land area. And also here, if your project is under GEF, the GEF program, you have also the GEF indicators here to select. So for example, area of restored land, area of forest and forest land restored. I guess the TRI projects, they are under GEF, right? So, and the GEF indicators, they are also selected by each area you provided. So you click on Save and Next, and the last tab on the initiative form is the results. So you have here 2 questions: achievements, were the restoration objectives achieved? Yes, partially, no. So let's use partially, because the initiative is still ongoing. And the results achieved based on targets, reforest degraded lands. Okay, so you save and exit. And here I will just filter by the restoration initiative group. And we have just registered this new initiative here, Enhancing Resilience through She Agroforestry Farm Models in Nigeria. You can always edit the information. So if you click here again, it will open and edit this information if you want. But now let's move to the next step, which is to add a good practice, right? So after you register, you have the option to add a good practice related to this initiative. Okay. So here we have the good practices form. The first thing I want to show you, just a second, because I want to show you here. So the first thing will show up when you add a good practice is this guidelines form information. So the first thing you have to sign is the consent note. So you need to read carefully here. We are telling you that we'll be sharing your information, and we'll make it public, available, and freely use it in the FERM platform. So you have to type yes to consent that we can share your information and disseminate your practice. Also here you have the information on what is a good practice for ecosystem restoration. It's exactly the information that Andrea presented us today. So you can always reread these and understand better. We have here also the guidelines for submission and the assessment criteria for a good restoration practice. As Andrea explained to you, after you submit your good practice, the practice will be redirected to a review process. So this is the assessment criteria that the review process will be using to evaluate your practice and say if it's good or not to be disseminated. So here you can always check this information. All the time when you are completing the good practice form, you can always click on the guidelines button and then see and check again the assessment criteria. Okay, so let's move to to give you more details on this form. So the first form was for monitoring purpose, is the first thing you do. And the second form, you're documenting a good practice from like your restoration initiative. Okay, so I will be keeping using the example of the shea agroforestry farming model. So in this first section, objectives and context, the idea here is to get like an overview of the practice. So they are mainly like multiple choice questions, is to give like the reviewers and the proponents who will be also assessing your practice after the dissemination, like to have an overview of the objectives and the context in which you started to implement the practice. So shea agroforestry farming model will be the title of the practice. The objectives: reforest degraded lands, increase food and products production, and improve livelihoods. Not necessarily the objectives of the practice will be the same as the initiative. Sometimes you will have just some objectives, not all the ones you used for the initiative. And then next question here, you can provide more details on these objectives you selected before. And here, next question is the areas. So here you can select the areas where the practice was implemented. So for the purpose of this practice here, we will be choosing only that area that we selected in the initiative form. But I know that this initiative example, they have implemented this in different areas. But for this practice, we want to highlight the example of one specific area. So you can select more than one, but now for this example, we're going to select one. So next is the ecosystems where it was applied for farmlands and savannas. And this information you probably think is repeating information, right, from the other the initiative form. But this information is important because, as Andrea showed you, we have a common search engine to be developed for different users around the world to find practices to be replicated or adapted. So they can filter there by ecosystem. So when you select the right ecosystem here and someone go there and find like, I want an agroforestry in a farmland. So then they can find easily your practice when disseminated. So it's important you give here this information. Then ecosystem and additional information. So is the specific ecosystem. And next question is the context. Here you can share some information on how is the ecological and socioeconomic and cultural context on the for the practices implementation. Next is the activities. Here you can select from the initiative form which activities you implemented in this practice. So for this practice, we are using the agroforestry, so tree planting and agroforestry, okay? We will not be talking about the trainings here, so maybe you can also add a new good practice to talk about the trainings inside this initiative. So you can add as many practices as you want regarding the initiative. So next question is on drivers. So drivers of degradation addressed by the practice. In this case, non-timber natural resource extraction, climate change, and economic drivers. And the next question, you can also explain better and provide more information on how you are reducing these drivers of degradation by applying the practice. And always click on Save and Next. Okay, so next tab of the Good Practices form is on methodology. So this section is about on the how you implemented the practice. Okay, so here we're going to ask you about steps for implementation, stakeholders engagement, participatory approach, the scale of the practice, and replicability. I'll just go through here quickly, and I'll stop here in the steps for implementation, bringing the example I have just to show you that it's important that you provide detailed steps, because the aim here is for someone else, a practitioner from any place, find your practice in the FERM platform, and they can actually use this information to apply it in their own context, in their own situations. So it's important you provide like detailed information to actually like help someone else to replicate or adapt to the practice. So I'll just like show you here some example of steps. So the first step of this agroforestry farm model is the community selection. So choosing like which communities will be the agroforestry will be applied. So here they also give like the timing. So do 3 separate visits before rainy season. As a step 2, you have choosing the land. So after you select the communities, you will choose the land. So the farmland should come with shea and other trees, for example, and the size of the land recommended is 4 acres minimum and 10 acres maximum. Step 3 of this example is to establish partnerships. So with government agencies, private partnerships, women cooperatives. And step 4. Okay, this is a big one. Will be the land preparation, farm setup, and demarcation. So here you can provide the timing and the frequency of this. So here pre-raining season, the pre-dry season to prepare the land, equipment material used to prepare the land, the labor you will need, so manual labor to be deployed, and certified agronomists. Additional information, for example, no use of herbicides, no burning of debris. So here you can really provide like details on how to implement the practice. So this practice has more steps. You can add as many steps as you want. So I'll stop here because of timing, but just to like make you understand that the level of detail, it's important for the replication of the practice. And here we have questions on stakeholders engagement. So just show you that you can choose here. Okay, and then here you can provide more information on the stakeholders you selected previously here. So providing who are the implementers and beneficiaries of the practice. Also, we ask about types of knowledge. So what types of knowledge have been included in the practice? For example, indigenous people, practical knowledge. And also here, participatory approaches. This question is very important. As we show you the assessment criteria, we have one criteria about like stakeholders engagement, participatory approach, and this is very important that you provide like details on this, on how you fostered engagement, how all these stakeholders you selected, they built together and they implemented the practice. Next question on scale. So here you can indicate the scale at which the practice has been implemented, local level in this case, but regional, national, global. Next question is on the replicability. We ask, you need to provide if the practice has been tested and replicated in different contexts. So yes, no, and you can read here carefully. And here you can, if you, for example, select no, it was not replicated in different contexts, you can provide like the future opportunities for replication or adaptation. As Andrea said to you, we are, the FERM registry accepts good practices and promising practices. So if you were like tested only in one specific context, it's okay also to document the practice. So save and next. So this tab on methodology, you explained how the practice was implemented. And now after you implemented the practice, here you will share like what have you learned from the practice? So like the key factors, constraints, and lessons learned. So what are the key factors that need to be in place for the successful implementation of the practice? So here we'll choose like ecological conditions and land and natural resource tenure. I'm just selecting examples. And here you can provide additional information on the key factors you selected above. Also, you can provide the constraints, risks you face in applying the practice. This is also very important for the other practitioners who will be reading your practice. So like for this example here, I have one. So they face it in applying the agroforestry pest invasion, infestation. So how they can address this, proper timing for planting to avoid infestation. So you can add as many constraints or challenges you face it as you want. Next question is on lessons learned and recommendations. So here are like the recommendations we would like to share with other practitioners. Okay, and then click on Save and Next. And then so here you provided how you implement it. So what have you learned? And here, what are the benefits? So what happened after the implementation? What have you like validated as a benefit? So here you provide the positive impacts of the practice. So you can select here, okay, ensure land and natural resource tenure, increase food, increase farm income, increase diversity of income sources as an agroforestry. And here on 4.2, you have to provide positive impacts additional information. So here we are asking you to provide metrics or more quantitative data on these positive impacts you selected above. So for example, you selected increased farm income. You can provide a number of beneficiaries. You can provide, for example, protected area. What was the area in numbers you protected? So here you ask you to provide more quantitative data for the reviewers also have like more resources to assess the practice. So next is on negative impacts. If any, you can provide here negative impacts when applying the practice. And the last one here, validation. So you can describe how the practice was evaluated, also providing if like the methodological point of view of this, meta-analysis, cost efficiency analysis, and also if the practice has been validated with the beneficiaries. Okay, so save and next. The last section of the good practices form is for additional resources. So here we are the form provides you a place to provide testimonials, reference, links from websites, social media, publications, everything that can help like to ensure that the practice was successfully implemented, you can provide here using links. And also next questions on additional information on costs and benefits. So we are asking if you are interested in providing more details regarding the costs and benefits of the good practice. So you can select yes or no. And then if you select yes, you will be contacted by the FAO teams on economics and ecosystem restoration. Next one is additional comments. So here you are free to provide more information if you think you didn't have a place to provide information earlier, you can provide here. And next one is to upload a picture of the practice. So this picture will be used in the dissemination and the visualization of the practice. So in the common search engine, we will have this picture. So we are asking you to provide here a picture of your practice. And okay, so we finalize the practice here. So if you think you complete the practice with all the information needed and everything, you can submit it for review. I'll click here just as a test. So here, are you sure you want to submit this good practice for review? So if you say, okay, I'll say, okay. Okay, so you cannot change any information after you submit the practice. I'll just click here again, just to show you. So now I cannot like change my answers because I submitted. But I can always print the information I submitted. You can always print before you submit. Maybe you want to check your answers. You can save as PDF and you can have your practice like save it in your computer for checking before submitting. Okay. Also, you have this button here on feedback where you can provide us feedback on the documentation, on your documentation experience. And okay, so maybe I can just go back here to show you that you can select more than one practice. So we just completed this Shea agroforestry farming model, but you can always like add one more practice to your initiative. So for example, as I told you in the initiative forms, they also have one objectives inside from this initiative on beekeeping and apiculture. So now you want to provide a good practice in apiculture within this initiative. So you can start again and send this other practice for the review process. So I think that's it. And just to show you here, so we click on the register, but when the layout for visualization is prepared, and because we are still developing it, you'll be able to visualize your practice in this map. So you can click on the country and the place, and you can visualize the good practices on ecosystem restoration. Okay, that's it. So we can move on. Stop sharing my screen. Thank you very much. Stop sharing.
Thank you, Andrea and Cristiane, for this rich presentation on how we would like you to document your best practices and your lessons learned, and also on what exactly you need to provide to ensure that we've got as much information as possible, so other countries, other projects, the implementers, designers can learn from your best practice. So before going to the questions and answer session, we can see there already some questions that have been answered in the chat. We can maybe take them live. Is just to provide you some information on the next steps from our point of view, and for you to actually undertake, because most countries are in the ideal situation because you are past your midterm evaluation, most of you, so you already are implementing on the ground, so you've got experience, you've got good practices. So now we would like you to really identify your good practices from your initiatives, first stage, and then get familiar with the registry. You can see the web link here online, and also with the step-by-step guidelines, which are available online, but also will be shared with you to the chat. But also we also shared with you, I believe, some documentation beforehand for the webinar, because as at the moment, for example, for the French-speaking countries, the registry is not available in French yet. So we have prepared all the forms with the questions to be filled in French, and data can be inserted there. And once the website is ready for the French inputs, you can put them directly in the platform based with copy paste from your documentation, with your Word document that you have done. So we would like you also to ensure of our support. So if you need further guidance while you're actually doing the insert of your practice in the registry or in the offline form, you can always contact Cristiane and Andrea. They'll be happily provide more information on a bilateral basis of support to help you. And also for those that joined a little bit later during this webinar, we have recorded everything. So we also will share the recording with you, so you can go through the presentation again in your own time. So I would like now to ask you to, maybe for those that have answered the questions in the chat, if you would like to raise a question live, that will be also good. So please raise your hand so we can answer any questions you have. Thank you. I don't see any hands at the moment. Everything is clear.
Benjamin, in the meantime, sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, Lebeau, vas-y.
Oui, Benjamin, je viens de suivre la partie. J'ai pris bien sûr la présentation en cours, mais je comprends que c'est une plateforme d'enregistrement des bonnes pratiques. Bon, je viens même d'y entrer, je vois que c'est intéressant. On va essayer d'enregistrer ensemble ce que nous avons à notre niveau, et peut-être qu'on aura le temps d'en discuter. Merci beaucoup pour cette belle présentation.
Oui, merci Lebeau. Oui, tout à fait. Les collègues Cristiane et Andrea seront là, et toute l'équipe sera là aussi pour vous appuyer. Si vous avez rencontré des problèmes pendant l'insertion de votre meilleure pratique, bonne pratique. Andrea, you wanted to say something earlier? No? Any other question or comment? Because there was a question in chat about the difference between good practices and lessons learned. It's quite an important question, I believe. Andrea, you already provide response to it. Because, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Benjamin. Indeed, that's a very good question. And it's just to reiterate that this form for documentation of good practices has been designed with the main objective to provide enough information for others to replicate. So each question is intended to fulfill that objective. So for instance, there are two critical tabs in this form. That is the methodology, so steps for implementation, and so basically how you implemented the practice, or how others can what are the details that others need to know, but also like constraints, key success factors, and lessons learned, and those are related to the implementation of the practice. So in particular, for these lessons learned, what are those recommendations that you would like to share with others that are intended to replicate? So what you shouldn't do, what you should be careful about. So is basically that. If I hope it's clear. Otherwise, please let me know and we elaborate further. And now I will also take the opportunity for the first question that we received in the chat regarding with this the list of activities. That the list of activities, the complete list is, as Cristiane explained, is in the registration form, the first form, and this is a closed link for the moment, basically because we need to standardize information, so we leave like open is a bit difficult. But again, just to reiterate and to highlight that for both forms, you will have the possibility to provide feedback. There are some forms designed very short, very easy, you can access quickly and easily to provide feedback in case you think we are missing something that maybe is important to incorporate, for instance, for this particular question for this list, or if you think that other how was your experience, in case you want to provide us that option is already available in the platform. Thank you so much. I also see Rene.
Yes, Rene, go ahead. Please unmute yourself, Rene, the microphone.
Bonjour à tout le monde.
Bonjour.
René Bello depuis Mora au Cameroun. J'ai bien suivi les interventions des uns et des autres. J'aimerais savoir si l'inscription se fait à l'instant ou en différé. Merci.
Andrea, Cristiane, can you respond?
Yes, I think the forms are ready. You can incorporate or like complete the forms in the platform. The platform is basically finalized, but there's still some details. But you can, I mean, the platform is ready to be used. So with this also, as we are in this first stage of using the platform, we are ready to help in case you, as already Benjamin mentioned, through the process. So yes, we are ready to receive information.
C'est bon pour vous, René? Autre question? Other question? I don't see any other hand. But it's very, very important because we rely on all of you to really, because by getting a lot of information from all these different ecosystems and projects from TRI, we really can help make the UN Decade a success, because it was designed to really increase also visibility for restoration. So it's really critical. We rely on all these inputs from the countries, from the landscapes, the projects, and also while you really follow all these questions and fill in the boxes, you can at the end also use that information to maybe develop case studies, develop good communication and knowledge products for you in country as well, to share with other partners to scale up beyond your project. Any other comments, question? Yes, Rudolf?
Thank you, Benjamin and team, for the nice presentation. It's very clear. We really appreciate. I know it will help us to communicate. But my question is, once you apply and there is a mention of evidence-based, so will there be need for ground truthing just to confirm that there is evidence? Or will that be based on just the information that is shared? Thank you.
Andrea?
Yes. With that evidence is because for being a good practice, you need the practice is needed that the practice was tested, so that there is an evaluation process that confirmed that the practice was effective. So that could be through several ways. I mean, here in the form we are mentioning through a meta-analysis and expert review. On the ground validation, but it's basically how we confirm that from a technical and methodological point of view, the practice has demonstrated that it achieved the objectives, and that the impacts and the benefits were validated with the beneficiaries. So it's basically how we can know that. So that's a question in the form, and and that's critical to know that. That is a good practice, basically, because it's something that has not been tested, maybe, or just has been tested, but in one context, is a promising practice, and it hasn't been tested. I mean, it's something that is going good, but you don't have concrete results. Then we assume we classify it as an innovation or like experience that needs more validation. So if that's the case, then that experience shouldn't be, will not be ready for this. If I hope I was clear enough. Otherwise, please let me know.
Yes, thank you, Andrea. Because I just want to complement, because all the practices will go through this review process with an expert panel. So, but they don't really go to ground truthing on the ground. That's not the aim. So, like as Andrea said, you need to provide evidence and information of what has happened. Has it been ground truthed or not? So, based on that, the expert independent review panel will validate as a best practice, or saying, look, we need to have some more information on this or that. Does that answer your question, Rudolf?
Yes. Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there no more questions or comments? I think we need to wrap up for today. But I would like to encourage all of the participants to share this when we share you the recording, to share with all your project implementers on the ground as well, your partners, because those that implement the practices, they also will benefit from this information. So you can, together as a project team, document the best practice. So please share the recording. And if you, as mentioned, if you have any issues while documenting them through the platform or the offline documents, don't hesitate to contact our team for support. So I'd like to thank Cristiane, Andrea, and the interpretation panel for helping us with this webinar. And thank you all for participating. And I wish you good luck with documenting, and we hope to get a lot of information from you all.
So sorry, Benjamin.
Yes, Patrick, you have another last
So sorry. I was just going through the farm, and I kind of got stuck. When I go to add initiative, it tells me your organization. It doesn't move from there. I've used the link that has been shared in the text.
Andrea, Cristiane, you've got a quick answer to that. Otherwise, we can. It's important.
I'm sorry. Can you quickly repeat the question? I didn't understand. I apologize. Like,
I'm saying I've followed the link that you've shared on the text box.
Yes.
And I can see I am signed in, but now when I go to add initiative, it's only popping up something written your organization. But when I click on that, there's nothing.
Okay, it may be like you haven't received, maybe it's not approved yet, but let us follow up bilaterally and we can find, and we can help you for sure.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And if you have issues and you think it's important for others, please also use the D group. So other countries immediately can also learn from certain common issues that you might have. That might be very useful. Thank you all, and I wish you all a very good day.